This knife talk video is the part 2 of my carry knife collection overview. So I'm going over all the knives, or at least most of the knives that I carry regularly, or aren't ones that I'm keeping for, non-utilitarian purposes, like for sentimental reasons or as collector pieces, things like that. And I did my modern one-hand or modern folding knives and fixed blades in the previous video. This video is going to be my slip joints, which, as you can see, I have more slip joints than the other two kinds of knives. I almost always am carrying a slip joint, so I have a lot of different options. I tend to like the slip joints a lot more. I buy them more often and things like that for various reasons, but because of that, I have quite a few, so it needed a separate video. So to start out here, I did talk about these two in the previous video because I talked about multi-tools in that one, but these are slip joints. So this is the Leatherman Squirt. You can see it has a little slip joint mechanism there for the blade, and it's a nice little knife. Like I talked about in the other video, great for if you want to have a bunch of different tools like the knife, the scissors, little screwdriver, and a little screwdriver and bottle opener, plus a file, and then pliers, all in a really small package. So they threw on the knife for this one, so it makes for a nice little package. And then again, I did show this one in the other video, but this is the Victorinox Farmer, kind of a really classic slip joint. Some people don't consider them to be traditional knives. I certainly think that they are, because they were around. I mean, the Victorinox itself has been around for a really long time, but Swiss Army knives have been around for, over 100 years, if not more. And I think that if you showed this to someone in the early 1900s, they would easily recognize it as a knife and as a pocket knife with extra tools. So this is the Victorinox Farmer, really nice action. I've used it a good bit. They stay in nice shape, and they're all really made well. Victorinox does an incredible job, almost like an amazing job, of having consistent build quality, especially considering the sheer volume of knives that they make. So a really nice knife. If you don't have a Swiss Army knife, I would definitely suggest checking one out. Specifically from Victorinox. I feel that the Victorinoxes are a little bit higher quality than Wenger, even though Victorinox owns Wenger. I haven't tried a Squeeza tool, which I've seen those, like to try one at some point, but haven't tried those. But I've had a lot of good Swiss Army knives from Victorinox. And then the same can be said for Leatherman. The Leathermans are made in the United States. They seem to have good, consistent quality. I have had a couple break, like the spring on my on another one broke, and I was using my previous squirt a little bit too hard for the size of the tool probably, and actually one of the plier teeth broke off. But they have a great warranty. Both of those companies have great warranties. So I'm gonna do my Great Eastern Cutlery made slip joints first, just to go over those, because I have a lot more of the Great Eastern Cutlery made ones. To start out, here are a couple Queen made knives. This is a Queen number 11, I believe. Yeah, number 11 utility trapper. It's very, very similar to a case slimline trapper, so if you have one of those, gonna be pretty much the same size, really similar frame, and really similar blade shape. So it's kind of a long, almost a Turkish clip point. This one has D2 steel. It was a gift from my dad, and I really like it. I've had it for a long time, and I've used it a lot. I use this on some hunting trips and things like that. Now, it did come with a really, really thick edge. You can see that it still has kind of a wide edge, and I had to do a lot of work to get it to a good, cutting edge, especially because, as you can see here, it is D2 steel, Peter's Heat Treat, that's what the PH stands for, and they do a great job with this steel. So it is a well-hardened D2 steel that's gonna, cut really well, hold an edge well and everything. The problem is you just sometimes don't get good edges when they come. This one has really nice action, right around a 5, maybe slightly below a 5, but right around it. Snaps open and close really nicely. It is a little off-centered, very, very little. The blade is bent a little bit, and the swedge is not ground perfectly, but it doesn't come anywhere close to touching the liners or anything like that. So, you know, like it kind of is named, the utility number 11, it's a really good, you know, just general use knife. Like I say, I've used it for hunting and fishing, but also just, you know, as a good slim carry, really easy to carry, especially for the length of the blade. These are going to get very hard to find, I think, because they were inexpensive, so I think a lot of people bought them and used them and don't keep them in nice shape and everything. And Queen is out of business, and it doesn't look like they're coming back into business. Hopefully they do. Hopefully they can, you know, restructure, but it doesn't look like they will. So I really think that this is a nice knife. If you can get one of these before they're all gone, I suggest doing so. Coming to another Queen knife here. This is a Queen, I forget the number, I hope it says on here. Queen number 63 rail splitter in amber carved stag bone. By the way, this is zebra wood. So the amber carved stag bone is really nice. I saw it in pictures, didn't know if I'd like it, but I got some Queen Hunters, which I don't have one to show here because the one that I carry is being modified by Nick Birdvis, Birdvis Knives. It's going to have canvas micarta rather than the amber carved stag bone, and he's fixing some things. But I do have one in my collection that I'm keeping just to have a backup because you can't get them anymore. So I'll make a video of the knives that I don't carry, and it'll be in it. But this amber carved stag bone is really nice. It actually far exceeded my expectations of how it looks. It has a nice color. The jigging is, you know, somewhat natural. It's almost close to like a stag bone type look. I guess that's what it's called, huh? So, you know, they did a good job of getting that look. I didn't even think of that while I was saying it, but yeah, I guess they did a good job, right? It looks like stag, but it's been carved from bone, and it looks really nice. The reason I got this rail splitter is it's kind of a pattern synonymous with Queen. No one really is making this pattern. I talk about this in the pattern itself in the knife talk video I made on this knife specifically. So you can check that out, but it's a pattern that no one else is really using too much, and I wanted to have a Stockman style knife from Queen, and like I say, they're going to get harder to get. You can get a normal Stockman from Queen, but I'm trying to get kind of a unique iteration of the Stockman from each of the United States knife companies, and probably a Rough Rider also. You know, like Great Eastern Cutlery, Queen, Case, let's see, who else? Probably get one from Utica and things like that. So this is a Stockman style knife in the sense that it has a main blade, large main blade, and two secondaries. The main blade is a clip point, and then it has a coping blade, kind of a larger coping blade, and a pen blade. So this is kind of a burly knife. It's definitely a little thicker. The pull on the main blade is pretty strong, but it's a pretty well-made knife. You know, definitely I think for being a Queen knife from, you know, relatively recent, it has good construction. So I'm happy with this knife, and I'm going to keep it and carry it and use it because, like I say, you can't really get them anymore. So nice knife from Queen. Again, it has the D2 steel, so really good steel and everything. I haven't even sharpened this one yet. It actually came with okay edges, and the D2 steel is kind of hard to sharpen, so just haven't done it yet. But a nice knife, and I'm glad to have kind of an interesting Stockman style knife from Queen in my carry rotation. So moving on here to a Case knife. This is a Case full-size trapper in yellow Delrin. Really one of the more classic Case knives. It has the long, almost a Turkish style clip point blade, and the main blade, and then also a full-length spay blade. Really well made, to be honest. I hadn't bought a Case knife in a while when I bought this. They were on sale for very, very, very cheap, like, you know, less than half the normal price at a big box store after like the Christmas sale. And I bought some to, you know, give away and stuff like that. Gave one to my dad, a couple of friends, things like that, and kept one for myself, and I was really I'm pretty happy with it. So I don't love Case's True Sharp Steel. I think that it is kind of almost gummy when you sharpen it. The burr switches side to side pretty easily and more than on a lot of other steels, but it's very stainless and it does all right. It's pretty close to 440A, I think. You know, like I say, for the price, this is really well made. Good, no sharp corners or anything like that. Nice snap on both blades, as you can see. No play or anything. So I was happy with this case knife. And I do have another case knife. I have a back pocket with burnt amber bone and 154 cm steel. You can see I have a knife talk and a 1-minute overview of it up, so you can check that out. It's actually at case right now. There was a crack from this pin up to the bolster, and I don't know if it would have, you know, stayed stable or not. It was lifting up off of the frame a little bit, so I sent it in and asked them to fix that, so hopefully it'll be, you know, back soon. But that's another one from case that I carry and plan to continue to carry when I get it back that I don't have currently. And again, like I say, I would like to get a Stockman style knife from case. If you have a suggestion for a particular model, let me know in the comments. That's something that I've been kind of waffling back and forth on. I've considered the sow belly, but I'm afraid that the sheep foot is going to sit too high. I really don't like it when a sheep foot blade sits really high on a Stockman. That's one of the reasons I don't have one of the GCs. The 66 Stockman, cattle, or whatever they call it, Buckaroo Stockman, I think they call it. That's one of the reasons I don't have that, is because I feel that it looks like the sheep foot sits too high, and it kind of looks that way on the sow belly also. So if you have experience with that knife and you know it doesn't sit too high, let me know in the comments. I am leaning towards that one, but then also I've been looking at the equal end medium case Stockman, and then just a couple of the other medium-sized Stockmans. The large size looks like the clip point sits really high and is really tall. So if you have suggestions on that, let me know. I'd certainly appreciate to hear them. I don't really have access to seeing many case knives in person unless I drive to case, which actually it's only like an hour-and-a-half drive, I think, for me. But it's not something that I you know, can just do willy-nilly. But if you have experience with those knives, let me know in the comments, and hopefully that'll, you know, I can find one that will fit into my carry rotation. Moving on to Rough Rider here. Rough Rider, I again have 1-minute overviews of all these knives. I think I have one of this one, I'm not 100% sure. But I have a knife talk video on them also, and Rough Rider knives are really interesting. They are made in China, so that's something to be aware of, but they're made really well for their price. So this one, for example, was about $15, maybe a little less. This one was a little over 15, I think 18 maybe, and this one was $5. So super, super inexpensive. Definitely doesn't break the bank. And sometimes I consider, you know, just buying more of these than other knives and saving myself some money. But they're really well made for the price. So this is about $15. You can see that it has these really, really nice blood red jig bone covers. Really happy with those. I think that they look, you know, just as good as the high-end knives. You know, definitely the Queens, and I haven't had too many cases, but, you know, to give an example here, this is Indian paintbrush jig bone versus blood red bone. I actually do have a blood red, or no, I used to have a blood red jig bone GEC, but I don't think I have it anymore. So here's an example. You know, it's good looking covers for the price. But this one is interesting in another way, and this is another thing about Rough Rider. They make a whole bunch of different patterns. So they come out with all kinds of unique, different patterns that you don't normally see. And this one is a kind of a medium trapper, but it has a ceramic spay blade. And they did a really good job with it. It actually, you know, has great action, no play, and it's really sharp. So that's really cool. I really like that. It's something unique. It has a nice normal clip point for the main blade, and then it also has brass bolsters. So really cool knife from Rough Rider. I'm really happy with this one. really great fit and finish, to be honest, too, on this one. So the next one here is a Rough Rider Moose, and this is in black bone. It does look a little bit more blue or almost like a deep green, but it's really, I think, a nice looking color. Actually, my fiance said that this is one of the best looking knives that I have. So, you know, a nice looking knife, and especially because of the, I'm gonna try to change the focus here, especially because of the copper bolsters. So you see it has a lot of patina there. That's because those are copper. And it has two large main blades, like mooses tend to have, on two springs. This one has half stops and is a very kind of Turkish style clip point. The other is a spay, but it's kind of a unique take on the spay blade by Rough Rider, almost like a spay blade with a really big belly. So an interesting blade combination. Again, made well. This one was a little bit, excuse me, sorry, tight on the action when I first got it, but it has, you know, loosened up, and it's really nice. No blade rub. I think that there is a little bit of blade wrap on this blade, but I haven't taken the time to sharpen it out. They do come with nice edges, usually, the Rough Rider knives. So again, a unique knife. It actually is not equal end. This side is a little thicker than this side. And kind of just an interesting version of the moose knife from Rough Rider. I got this one to take on a moose hunt, and I got it because the Great Eastern Cutlery moose knives came out just after I was going on the moose hunt. They were like in production, so that was kind of interesting. But nice knife. I've considered getting, excuse me, one of the 81 moose knives from Great Eastern Cutlery, but I haven't yet. They still have some available on dealers' websites. But another unique, cool one from Rough Rider. This is a Rough Rider small Barlow. One thing I really like about the white bone knives from Rough Rider is that they don't have shields. I don't really like shields on Barlows. I think that it's too crowded when you have a shield on a Barlow. But this is just a real little Barlow. I had one of these in college that I actually carried and used a lot. I don't really remember what I did with it. I might have given it away or something, but I wanted to get another one. I found this one for real cheap, like $5.50, I think, online. And I got it, and it's a nice knife. No play, nice action, as you can see, no half stop. It is centered well, and it came with a good thin edge, and the blade is pretty thin, so, you know, it's going to slice well. So nothing super fancy about this knife or anything like that, certainly not to be expected for $5, but it's a knife that's going to work well. If you want a small little knife to throw in your watch pocket, this is a great option. These ones are actually kind of, I don't think that Rough Rider makes the small white bone Barlows anymore, so they're not as easy to find, but they do make other, you know, knives in this pattern, just with different handles and stuff like that. So another nicely made knife for a very low price from Rough Rider. Moving on, here is a buck knife. This one is one that I won on Blade Forums in a giveaway that Carboniferous, that's his username, did. And it's a nice little knife. This is a Chinese-made buck, but I believe the knives made in China still have their warranty, which everyone says is really good. I've never used it, but I hear that it's really nice. This is a two spring, two blade, but it is really, really thin. So very thin, easy to carry. Definitely can carry it in a watch pocket. And it has a little clip point blade, not too much belly on it, more, you know, almost straight, but with a pointier tip. And a thin blade, so it cuts well. Came with a pretty nice edge. It has a hollow grind, which I guess a lot of the bucks do. So, you know, nice, comes down to a real thin edge. Honestly, pretty good snap. I got a buck 301, or I think 303 maybe, and it didn't really have a strong enough spring. I think the 303 actually had a lighter spring than this knife. So, pretty good snap open and closed. No blade play on that main blade. And then the secondary blade is a coping blade. So you know, very utilitarian blade shape, super inexpensive. I've seen them at Walmart and stuff. So, you know, if you want to pick up a, you know, maybe not a USA made knife, but a very low cost knife with a good warranty, this is a good option. I think this is called the Deuce, but it's the Buck 375. These are bone handle, or I'm sorry, not bone. These are wood handles. I don't know if it's dyed or if it's, you know, a dark wood, but either way, it looks pretty good with the slanted bolsters and things like that. So a nice little knife, especially for the price that you can get them for. This one's kind of a similar style knife. It's a single spring though for this one, and it's from K-Bar actually. This is one that was my dad's. He wasn't using it anymore, so I kind of sharpened it up, things like that. And it's, you know, again, a nice little knife. I think that this kind of pen style knife with main blade on one end and then a secondary on the other is a very utilitarian style knife. And a lot of times it's all you'll need. This is a very thin blade, so it slices pretty well, especially for being kind of worn out. Good snap, open and closed also. The secondary blade on this one is a pen blade. Again, kind of worn down, but still cuts well on everything. Good snap on it. I think there's a little bit of rub, but it doesn't really matter when it's such a tiny knife. This one has brown jigged synthetic handles. Not the best looking handles in the world, but this is one that, you know, you can have and not really worry about too much because it's older, and you know, even though it was my dad's, it doesn't really have too much sentimental value. I don't think it was a knife that he, you know, really cared too much about. So just one that's, you know, a small knife that can work well. K-Bar still does make some slip joints. I forget what they're called, but they have a dog head shield, and they look nice. So you can check those out. I'm sure that they're nice. Haven't had one of the recently made ones though. Moving on to another Swiss Army knife. I forgot to include this one in the previous video. I have all kinds of these. This is a Victorinox Classic, and everybody has these. It's the most widely made knife in the world, probably in the history of the world. It has the, you know, small, almost a pen blade, and then it has a screwdriver. You can use it to pry, and then a file. I've used this file quite a bit, and they work well. It has scissors on the other side. They work pretty well too for the size. And then it has a toothpick and tweezers. So just a little knife that you can put in your keychain. You can have them, you know, stashed different places. I have a normal red one stashed in my car. You know, just put them wherever you need them. They're relatively inexpensive, and you know, they're always made the same. So the Victorinox Classic is called that because it is a classic. So, you know, I'm sure everybody watching this has or has had one of these, but you know, everybody has one. I have one too. This, I'm not sure that this is a slip joint. I'm not sure this should go in this video, but this is the Tactical Keychains Tuck, or Tactical Utility Keychain Knife. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's not locking. It just uses a magnet to hold the blade in, and you actually have to hold the blade out when you push it out. So it uses these little utility blades. Kind of a cool little knife. Probably not traditional. I would say definitely not traditional, but not a locking knife, and I didn't include it in the previous video. So here it is. You can put it on a keychain and have a tiny little blade if you need to, and especially if you need something that doesn't look like a knife. This looks more like a USB than a knife, I think. So just something that I have. This is the Cold Steel Kudu, and it is not a slip joint, but it is a traditional knife. So the Kudu is kind of an homage, or I guess maybe a copy of the Okapi style knives. The Okapi is actually a company. They make wooden handled knives like this with this kind of ratchet lock. So it's a ring. You use it to use a ring to open it. Or I'm sorry, to close it. But as you open it, there's little notches inside there. I think you can see them, that make it kind of make that ratchet sound. And then it works like a back lock. You can see there's a little notch that this kind of tab sits down into, and it holds it closed. It has play. It's not going to be a super, you know, high tolerance knife because they're like $7. But then you pull this back and push it to close it. I think this is one of the less safe knives to close. I don't really ever loan this to someone who doesn't know what it is or how it works, because it would be real easy to be pushing on the blade as you open it and close it on your hand. So definitely I would say not one of the safer knives, because like a slip joint, if you know that it's not locking, you know, you're not going to push on the blade that much. And if you do, it's going to start to close and you're going to realize. This one, you know, you can push on the blade because it's locked, and then there's going to be a point where, you know, you are pushing still and it breaks that lock face and it can swing closed relatively quickly. But maybe that's what the ratchets are for. Anyway, really inexpensive from Cold Steel. I think this is $7 or $8. I just was looking online at the actual Okapis, and they're only about $15 on like dealer websites, I think. So check those out also. But you know, kind of a nice knife. I throw this one in my my bag. I keep it in my backpack just if I need a bigger knife and for some reason, you know, don't have one in my pocket. So you know, one you could throw in your bag or something like that as a backup. So now moving on to the Great Eastern Cutlery made knives. So I've had a lot of Great Eastern Cutlery knives. I've carried a lot of different ones. There are a lot that I've had and have carried a lot and don't have anymore. And first of all, I want to mention a couple that I have, or I still own, and will probably continue to carry, but I don't have with me right now. And those are, one, a Great Eastern Cutlery Northfield number 65 Ben Hogan in black gold acrylic. It's a spear point. It is another knife that my dad gave me at the same time as this one. I really like it. It's a really cool knife. It's like a very long, thin jackknife with a little bit of a guard in the bolster. I don't have it because it's had blade wrap the whole time I've had it. And I was trying to sharpen it out, but I just didn't want to mess with it too much. So I sent it in along with these two other knives I'm going to mention to Great Eastern Cutlery for them to sharpen it out or do whatever they needed to do to get that blade wrap out. The second one is a Great Eastern Cutlery Northfield number 43 Oregon Trapper in Stag. And I sent it in for the same reason. I sharpened that knife like at least 10 times with a diamond sharpener, and it still would get blade wrap if I closed it without, you know, letting it close very slowly. And again, on a knife that I'm carrying, I don't think you should have to close the knife very slowly to keep it from damaging itself. A lot of times if I'm using a knife, I want to be able to close it, you know, against my leg, like put the spine of the blade on my leg or pant leg and close it. And I don't think that a knife should damage itself when you do that. So that one went in also. And then finally, I have a Great Eastern Cutlery Titty Ute number 45 Lumberjack in muscle bone, that Pioneer muscle bone, I guess, that was really nice. I got it at a rendezvous in 2016, but it started to dig into the liners. So the tang, let's see, what's a good example here? So the tang of the blade right here at the plunge grind, this part was rough, and I didn't really realize it until this kind of issue came up, but when you closed it, it dug into the liners. And that's actually an issue that I think that, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try to bring it up to Bill Howard Sr. and Bill Howard Jr. and Chris Tucker when either when I go there for the rendezvous or you know, maybe I'll email them. Like I say, I have a knife there for that reason right now, but it's an issue that I've found on a good number of my knives from them that have been opened and closed a lot. So what happens is if this plunge grind here is rough, when you close it, it digs into the liners and creates little troughs, like the burrs here dig in and create little, you know, I don't really know how other to say it other than, you know, like troughs, like tilling, you know, a garden or something like that. And this knife has it also. I really don't know if you're going to be able to see it. If you can see a tiny little notch looking thing right there, that's it. So it does it on both sides. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it again, but it's actually so much so that you can catch your fingernail on it. So it's definitely an issue. And that knife I sent in because it was so bad on the 45 Lumberjack that I couldn't open the knife safely or reasonably. I would open it and it would get real tight, and then I couldn't get it the whole way, and when I closed it, it wouldn't close on its own. So you know, that's something I think to watch for. I really like Great Eastern Cutlery knives. Obviously, I think that they're the best made knives out there, traditional knives out there right now. But I wonder if that's because their grinders are older and are leaving some more of the burrs, or if maybe they just need to polish those areas, those plunge grinds, a little bit more, which I actually did on a few of the knives that had that issue. So moving on to the knives that I do have, the first one here is a Great Eastern Cutlery Northfield number 22 Magnum in Lookingglass or sea glass acrylic. I always forget what the exact name of this cover material is, but it's one of those two. I'd have to look at the tube to remember, but it's good looking. My fiance always says that this is a pretty knife, and I agree, it is nice looking. Now, one thing here, there is a little gap. Where is it? Over here on this end. You can see there's a little gap there where the acrylic must have warped or something like that, but not a huge deal. This is the Northfield version, so it has a long pull on the clip point main blade, and I really like the shape of the clip points on this 22 Magnum frame. It's just a classic, very classic American style clip point. And then it has a pen secondary. I dropped the kick on the pen secondary on this one. Didn't really drop the spring too much, but it did make it sit a lot lower, so it's easier to get to this clip point main. But nice little pen blade, pretty normal, especially for a GEC pen blade. Great snap on both, really nice action, good, about a 4, I'd say 4.5 or 5 on the pull, 5-ish on the pen. But I dropped this pen blades kick because it does have a long pull. And actually, originally, when this run of knives actually was done a few years ago, let's see when it was made. These were made in 2014. So in 2014, I got one of these in the Titty Ute trim, which has a nail nick instead of a long pull. And it was in ebony. I think that traditional knives really look great in ebony. I think that it's just a really classic handle material. So I really liked how that knife looked, and I thought that the nail nick was a little bit easier to get to. I had it for a long time. I actually ground the pen secondary into a coping blade, and I really liked it, but I got rid of it. I sold it in a big sell-off. I've done that once or twice and regretted it, so I got this one you know, a year or two ago over Instagram, and I definitely like it. Really nice knife, definitely a keeper, but I do think that I like the looks of the ebony a little better. But because I have this knife, I'm thinking about getting one of the upcoming number 44, what are they calling them? I think maybe just gun stock, number 44 gun stocks, in Cocobolo, because it's going to have brass bolsters and a bullet shield, so that's going to be pretty cool. It's like a 3.5 inch, you know, 15 sized version of this knife, so you can imagine this frame pretty much exactly, but the size of this knife. So nice knife, one of my favorites. I carry it in a watch pocket, or you know, if I just want to carry a smaller knife. Moving on to another knife around the same size, is the Great Eastern Cutlery Titty Ute number 18 Beagle in oil sucker rod. And so the 18 Beagle is pretty close to a peanut style knife. It's a serpentine dogleg jack with a main blade and a secondary, but Great Eastern Cutlery changed up the blades. So this, instead of a clip point, has a spear point. Nice little spear point, pretty simple utilitarian blade, and then a coping blade. So I like the coping blade, nice little straight edge for utility work and things like that. I dropped the kick on these because you could. It doesn't have any blade wrap after dropping the kick or anything like that. So really nice knife. I like it a lot. It has great action, nice opening, closing on both blades. I like this shield. I think that they call this the Houndstooth Shield. But the main thing, I really like the oil sucker rod handles. So this is wood that they salvage from the surrounding area of Titusville, which Titusville is where the oil industry in America started. And before they used metal or plastic casings for oil wells, they used wooden casings. And that's what this is. So it's impregnated with oil from, you know, wells from the region, and it's a really cool handle material. I hope that they use it more. I think it's, you know, one of the most unique handle materials that you could find, and very cool with the historicity of it and everything like that. I did get my dad one of the number 81 Stockman, which is kind of Great Eastern Cutlery's large Stockman with the oil sucker rod handles at the Rendezvous, maybe 2014, I guess. You know, really cool handle material, and one that I hope that they use in the future. And I will be trying to, I'm gonna get that number 81 Stockman from my dad and do a video on it. It's a really cool knife, super well made. It was, again, I think for the 2014 Rendezvous. This is made in 2016. So I do think that they still have access to that material, and I hope that they keep making knives with it. This is my oldest Great Eastern Cutlery knife. I saw a member of Blade Forums was posting pictures of his username was Eshwabach. I haven't seen him on the forum lately. I hope, you know, he's doing all right and everything. Because, you know, he was posting pictures of his GEC TC number 15 sheepfoot Barlow and smooth ivory bone. And it made me want to get one, so I did. And at that time, it wasn't that hard to get them like it is now. You didn't have to reserve them ahead of time. This one was still just sitting on a dealer's website. Now, you might be wondering, if you haven't seen my other videos on this knife, why I'm saying smooth ivory bone. Well, this actually did start as smooth ivory bone, and I carried and used it a whole lot. So one tell of that is how much the blade is worn away. So you can see that I've sharpened the blade down quite a bit, and that's just from, you know, using it and keeping it sharp and stuff. I do use diamond sharpeners every now and then, so, you know, have worn down the blade quite a bit. You can see, though, that it does have incredible action still. Some of the nicer action of any of my knives. Great snap, open and close, good centering, everything like that. But it did start as smooth ivory bone, but because I use it so much, it's starting to look a little bit different, and I think I just kind of decided to try the tea bath that a lot of people on the forums talk about, where you put it in tea and it kind of darkens the bone and things like that. Well, I did that and it looked absolutely terrible. I still have a picture of it and it just looks awful. So then I decided I needed to dye it black, so I dyed it black. That was a few years ago, and since then it lightened up a little bit, so actually I dyed it red, and it kind of was black with some red undertones. I liked it. But I decided to go back to just plain black. I think it looks really classy and traditional, just like the ebony knives do. So, you know, it was a smooth ivory bone handle knife. Now it's a black bone handle knife. I don't think that Great Eastern Cutlery has done any other smooth black handles. So, you know, kind of unique in that way, even if it was just a modification by me. But like I say, this is my oldest Great Eastern Cutlery knife. It was made in 2013. Really well made. No play after these, you know, 5 years of carrying and using it. Great action. One that I'm gonna keep forever for sure. And a 15. So if you know that the 15 run is happening right now, this is what they look like. This is obviously a sheep foot, so the spear points will look a little different. But this is the size. I have kind of big hands, but very kind of medium, normal size knife, and usually really well made from Great Eastern Cutlery. Moving on to another Barlow here. I've had quite a few Barlows from Great Eastern Cutlery. So I have had this one. I have had the anniversary TC Barlow with a clip point and red soup bone handles. I have a red cranberry saw cut handled sheepfoot. I have had the spay blade and the green pine bone jig bone handles. I had one that was one of three made, an Appaloosa soup bone, I think they called it, Barlow. So the only TC Barlows made by Great Eastern Cutlery with a bottle opener on it. Bill Howard made 3 of them for a rendezvous one year, and they had a sheepfoot blade and a bottle opener slash screwdriver, and had the soup bone handles, or I mean, Appaloosa bone maybe. They were really cool. Like I say, only 3 were made, and Charlie doesn't agree with having Charlie Campagna, the maker or the designer of these TC knives, doesn't agree with having a bottle opener on them because it's not traditional. So I remember the tube, Charlie wrote like "not supported by Charlie" or something like that. I still have a picture of it, so you know, it's kind of cool. But I ended up getting rid of it because I already had this one in sheepfoot. I sold it in one of those sell-offs. Kind of wish I hadn't, but anyway. I've also had, I think I had a spear point one at some point. I had one of the original TC Ancients, which were in like a long coping blade with scratted parchment bone. That was really cool. Got rid of it also, again in one of the sell-offs. So kind of, hopefully I learned my lesson on the whole sell-off thing. But I have sold some recently, so maybe not. But anyway, I don't think that I had one of these before. I might have, but this is a Northfield number 77 Barlow. These are a special factory order for Collector Knives, Mike Latham of Collector Knives, and he's done quite a few runs of these, different, you know, blade shapes, blade combinations, but this is the most recent one. These were sold using a new system, a lottery system, and some people liked it, some didn't. You know, I think at least Mike's trying to do it, you know, in an intelligent way. I don't really, you know, however they do it, if I wanted to get a knife, I'll, you know, figure it out and try to get it. But I got one of these in the smooth elderberry bone. I was thinking it was going to be more like the jigged elderberry bone, a little bit more purple, darker, but they turned out kind of pink, as you can see. And I think that it's a good looking bone color, to be honest, just not exactly what I was picturing. This one has the Northfield stamp, as you can see, rather than the Untitled Cutlery. And then it has a clip point main. So this is what, on a previous single-bladed run, Mike Latham had called his called the pinchable clip point, and it does have a match strike long pull. So supposedly that's so you can strike matches on it. I've never tried it, but people kind of complain that you can't really, I mean you can, but it's kind of tough to pinch this open. I don't really think that that's a smart complaint because it is a 2-blade. The other one was a single blade. It's usually pretty tough to pinch open 2-blade knives, but if not, you know, usually impossible. But I like the blade shape. I think that it's a really classic, you know, American style clip point. And I've used this one some, and I think that it's a nice clip point. And then it has a long coping secondary, which also is nicely made. It does have a little bit of an upturn towards the tip, and I dropped the kick on this one a lot. So it sat so that this was actually up above the swedge of the clip, so sat higher than the top of the spine of the clip point. I dropped it a lot just so that it would, you know, feel a little better in the hand when you're using it. And because this way now, there's, you know, if you sharpen it, it's not gonna become proud of the frame right away. And it's still, you know, easy to get to and everything. So I like this knife, but I have dropped it a couple times, did some damage here and here. It loosened up, I think, from me trying to... So it loosened up, like I was saying, a little bit from me dropping the kick and then kind of messing with it. So I had to tighten it back up, which made the pivot pin stick out a little bit. And then I dropped it again, and that left some chips there. So I was going to sell this knife because I just didn't think that it was one that, you know, I needed to have. But I guess I'm going to keep it now because it's, you know, kind of past selling point. So a nice knife, kind of one that was hard to get, I guess. So I'm glad I got one, and now it's definitely a user, so I won't have any trouble throwing it in my pocket and putting it to use. Another kind of cool one from Great Eastern Cutlery is this Northfield number 35 Churchill in smooth green banana bone. So this is the first time that they use this banana shaped shield, and it's kind of cool. I like the, you know, kind of quirky different things like that they do. This green banana bone, I think it shows a little greener on camera than it is, maybe a little lighter. It's on mine is just really a light yellow. I think some of them did have a little bit more green in them, but cool that it has the banana shield and the yellow color. This is a really nice blade shape combination. It's like a bigger pen blade, like those two there, or pen knife, not blade. It has a single spring, and the main blade is a clip point. Again, not quite as much of a traditional, or I don't know, not quite the same as this clip point, but really nice clip point, very utilitarian, has a nice tip and then some straight edge and belly, and really smooth, great action on this knife. And then the secondary is a sheep's foot. Oh, actually, now that I think about it, this is technically a sheep's foot on this blade. And I guess this is also technically a sheep's foot. So the difference here, just real quick to illustrate the difference between all three of these knives blades, the two secondaries on the 18 Beagle and the 77 Barlow, and then the secondary on the 35 versus a true cloping blade like on the rail splitter. Notice how the two edges come together here into a point, whereas on these three, I don't know if you can see all three, they come to a kind of a rounded top. So that makes it a sheep foot, the rounded top there, and this makes it a coping blade. So that's just a quick show the difference between the sheep's foot blades and the coping blades. But the sheep's foot secondary on the 35 Churchill is really nice. It's also really thin, so thin that it actually has a little bit of flex to it. Really good for opening boxes and cutting cardboard and things like that. And great action. This knife has some of the best action. Really smooth opening and closing, great snap, everything like that. Spacing is done really well. I dropped the kick on this sheep foot quite a lot because it was up above the clip point blade, and I think that it feels a lot better in the hand, like it is dropped, and it's just as easy to open, and you know, just kind of, I think that's how it should have been from the factory, but you know, who knows why they make the sheep's foot blades sit high like they tend to do. All knife companies tend to do that. Moving on, this is a 78 Titty American Jack in the spear point blade from the recent run, 2017, right at the end of 2017, in white, smooth white bone. Really nice knife. I've made a couple knife talk videos about this recently, so I'm not going to go into super detail, but it's really well made, and I like the plain white bone. Really similar, to show you a comparison, to the Rough Rider. Rough Rider's a little different, has a little bit more character in it, I guess, some black spots and stuff. And this is a little bit less so. And then if you would have seen the smooth ivory bone that was on the 15, it was even less. So real smooth, kind of an oiled color to it. But a really nice knife, sleeve board style jack with a spear point blade, super utilitarian, and one that I've decided to keep, and it's a really useful knife, and again, really well made with great action, no gaps, things like that. So a nice knife here. This one is my Stockman from Great Eastern Cutlery, so I was talking about how I'd like to have a Stockman from kind of all the different companies. This is kind of a unique Stockman from Great Eastern Cutlery because of the blade shape. So this is kind of a serpentine Stockman. It's the number 82 Dixie stock knife in Indian paintbrush jigged bone. And rather than a normal clip point, they have kind of a Turkish clip point here. Really long clip to the blade, and then kind of a more gradual belly there. Really useful clip point. I've used this one a good bit. Again, I had one of these in actually this same handle material before, and it's one of the ones that I got rid of in a sell-off, and then I ended up getting it back. So I'm glad that I have it. I think that it's a really nice version of a Stockman, because rather than a sheep foot blade for one of the two secondaries here, it has a Wharncliffe, which makes it kind of sit a little bit lower, be less obtrusive in your hand when you're gripping it, and also have a little bit more of a point. So I really like that. And then the second secondary blade, rather than a spay blade, it has a drop point. So more belly, a little bit less of a drop tip there, but still a little bit of a drop for the tip. Really useful blade. I keep this one sharp and don't really use it for anything, so it's like a backup blade. So I really like this blade shape combination on the 82 Dixie stock knife from Great Eastern Cutlery, and I also really like this Indian paintbrush jig bone. Really good looking. It's like a red with, there's a little bit of green underneath. So really nice knife. One thing about this, because it has the rounded bolsters, unlike the 81 Stockman that they make, it is a relatively big knife. I think it's it's about 4.5 inches closed. But it has, it rides well in the pocket because it's pretty rounded. The tangs don't stick up too high and everything like that. So really nice knife, packs a lot of utility into the size. Moving on to this knife. This is the Farm and Field number 21, or no, I'm sorry, Farm and Field number 71 bull nose in OD green linen micarta, and this is from the recent run. I've had a few of these also, so I got one from the first run when they were in 01 tool steel, and I liked it, but I ended up selling it. It's interesting, the guy who I sold it to still has it and posts pictures of it a lot on blade forums, and even still has the lanyard that I put on it, so that's kind of cool. But I decided to get one from this run, and I talked about that kind of issue there earlier. It still has good action. It came with a really strong pull, but it has broken in quite a bit. You can see it has great snap. Now one thing, this knife kind of had intermittent blade wrap. It would not have blade wrap for a while, and then I'd close it and it would just have it kind of inexplicably. Got really frustrated with it. I didn't want to send it in because I'd already sent in those other knives I talked about, so I just sharpened it a whole lot. You know, just sharpened it every time it would get blade wrap, and it kept getting it, and then finally I just decided to really go hard on the sharpening, and I sharpened it, again, but really aggressively with my diamond sharpening stone, and finally it doesn't seem like the blade wrap's going to come back. So I did have a little bit of blade wrap on this, but it does have really nice action, opens and closes with good snap, relatively well centered. This handle shape is, kind of really simple and feels good in the hand. It's about 3.5 inches closed, but you can get a full 4-finger grip, and because it's a little thicker, you can really, use it, and it doesn't feel, bad in your hand. And then the drop point or Skinner style blade is really useful, really utilitarian. These sodbuster style knives, like this one and the next one, are kind of the American version of the peasant knife or working man's knife. They're usually less expensive. This is one of the least expensive Great Eastern Cutlery knife, and just makes for a really good using knife. Less frills, but lots of utility. So the bullnose is a nice knife, kind of a medium version. And then they have the number 21 Farm and Field Bull Buster, which is the larger version. This one's about 4.5 inches closed, or maybe 5, 4.5, with about a 3.5 inch blade. So it's definitely quite a bit bigger. It has even a little bit stronger spring. So I think some of the people complaining about the spring on the recent run of the number 71s probably weren't, maybe they weren't into GEC knives yet when these came out in 2014, but they all had pretty strong pulls also, and this one does too. I got this one recently, or relatively recently, and it's nice. It has been used, has maroon linen micarta scales, but just a big knife that's going to be able to handle really any kind of cutting task that you can ask of a slip joint. Again, really classic Skinner drop point style blade. These ones, the Bull Busters, have a little bit more gradual of a belly on them than the Bull Noses, but pretty much the same shape, just a lot bigger. So you can see that it fits in my hand really well. really big, pretty wide, but you know, you can put it to heavy use and it'll be able to do that fine. So again, nice knife if you want a cheaper but also a big knife from Great Eastern Cutlery, and hopefully they do another run of these. This is the same frame that they do the Smith & Sons mud bugs on, but the mud bugs don't have quite as thick scales. They're quite a bit thinner actually, and they're a lockback rather than a slip joint. So they seem to have done more runs of the mud bugs than the 21s. So, you know, check that out if you would like, you know, a bigger version of the number 71 bullnose. And then finally here, for the ones that I carry and use and that I have available right now, is the Great Eastern Cutlery Northfield number 98 Texas camp knife. And this is another Charlie Campagna special factory order. It's the only camp knife or scout knife that Great Eastern Cutlery has done. What that means is that usually a scout or camp knife has a bottle opener / can opener, an awl, and a main blade. The main blade often is a spear point, but it's a clip point on this one. Sometimes also they'll have a sheet foot secondary or some other kind of secondary like a pen blade. But this is a really big knife. You can see compared to the bullnose, it's even bigger than the bullnose. But I've actually carried and used it quite a bit. It's one that I got my initials put on, partly to make it so I know never to sell it, even if I get in a sell-off type mood. But I really like it. I've used it a lot. I took it to Alaska on a hunting trip and used it for all the camping there. The awl, really great awl, big. It's definitely a bigger awl, but it works well. The sheet foot, nice, you know, classic sheet foot. Slices well, it's nice and thin. The can opener and bottle opener I've used quite a bit for opening cans, you know, while camping and things like that. And the bottle opener works pretty well on this also. And then finally, really nice kind of traditional clip point blade. I think this is a really good looking clip point blade, and it cuts well and everything like that. And then kind of forgetting, this is cranberry jig bone, I believe. But it's a little bit of a different cranberry jig bone than other ones that I've seen from Great Eastern Cutlery, but it looks really good. So that's all of the slip joint knives that I carry that I have available to put in the video right now. So, you know, lots of different ones here from a few different companies: Leatherman, Victorinox, Queen, Case, Rough Rider, Buck, K-Bar, Cold Steel, and then Great Eastern Cutlery, and lots of different kinds. I think that slip joints are great to carry and use. I think that they're easy to use. I like the simplicity of them, and I like the variability of the styles, and I think that that's cool, especially with these, you know, American-made ones, that they're being made in the same way that they've been made for a long time. So I appreciate carrying them both for their utility, because there's so many different styles of blades and sizes and things like that, and also for the you know, historicity of them. So I know another long video here, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. If so, feel free to leave your comments, questions, or anything like that below. Again, like I said, suggestions for a case stockman, I'd appreciate help on that. And like the video, and also if you'd like to get notifications for my other videos, I have more coming out. Subscribe so you get, you know, notified when I post them. And I have over 100 other videos, so check those out also, and don't forget to go out and do good.